Well, hello and welcome to this week's You Hack, We Hack webinar. Today I'm Ricky Wheeler and I'm going to be talking about tracking B2B marketing ROI. And this is something that I am incredibly passionate about, and I'm hoping to share with you today all the things that I've learned over the last 10 years as a SaaS marketeer. So a short introduction to me. I've been in the SaaS marketing game for a long time. In fact, when I began in SaaS, it was known as ASP. I'm the CMO at Ebsta. I recently became a certified Pardot consultant, but I'm actually one of Pardot's first UK customers and started using the tool about 7 years ago. I've also been using Salesforce for quite a long time. So before I used Facebook, I was using Salesforce, and I'm happily married with 4 kids. So getting onto the subject of today, we all want to spend marketing dollars on the activities that generate revenue. Isn't that true? It's certainly true for me. It's not just about building the most effective marketing campaigns. As marketeers, many of us need some concrete evidence to go to our CEO and say, hey, we need to spend £10,000 doing this event, or we need to buy this software, or we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we need those stats to back up the arguments to be able to invest in the right marketing. Now, the reality is this is what we all want. We want to be able to look at every single marketing campaign, look at the costs, look at the leads generated, and see the opportunity value and how much business was won from those marketing activities. But the reality is most of us, and believe me, I've worked with a lot of certainly tech companies, but many other organisations, and their marketing reporting looks more like this. There are many gaps, there are many holes, and the information held within this report doesn't even ring true. So, what is stopping us? What is stopping that all-important ROI tracker for marketing? And for me, it really boils down to 3 things. I think there's an inconsistency around the way we track campaigns. I think that the definition of a campaign is very, very confusing. I also think that there's data silos. I think there's information sitting in different systems that don't talk to each other, and bad processes that couple with that. And anyone that works in B2B doesn't have the luxury of working in this world where someone clicks on a pay-per-click ad and they come through and they buy a product online, and it's very, very easy to do full ROI reporting on the PPC. For most people in B2B, the sales people and the sales process get in the way of that lead coming in and the opportunity closing, and we're really reliant on the salespeople to help us track, and it often doesn't happen. Now, the good news is, today I hope to help you overcome all of those problems. We're going to start off with defining how you can define your campaigns for reporting and in Salesforce and in Pardot so they all make sense. I'm going to take you through the differences between the campaigns in Pardot and Salesforce and the benefits of each. Then we're going to look at the way of automating campaigns between the Pardot and Salesforce, and that section is really about how Salesforce campaigns come alive, how we really drive the campaign section of Salesforce. Then I'm going to discuss, well, I'm going to show you actually how Ebsta have managed to really take the sales reps out of the equation when we're looking at accurately calculating ROI. And then I'm just going to share some of the things that I've learned over the past few years on how not to get caught out by information you may think it is actually true when it's not. So we start off with campaigns. Look at this screen. And you tell me, what is a campaign? I'm sure that everyone on this call will disagree on which of these activities is a campaign. And for me, there's a very, very easy answer as why this is so confusing. So let's take this example. We met Steve at Dream14. That's when we first came in contact. He recently clicked this link. So my content marketing person put a link for this webinar on LinkedIn. You can see the Google parameters here, the UTM source is LinkedIn. Signed up for today's webinar. Now, what campaign should Steve be associated with? Is it Dreamforce? Is it the LinkedIn of where he came from? Or is it the actual webinar? So there's a big difference between the source, which might be where someone originally came from, whether that's they first signed up for a webinar, they signed up for a demo, or we met them at an event and they were scanned. And traffic source, the traffic source is where we come from. And often when we're talking about campaigns, we think, well, if we're doing all this stuff on LinkedIn or we're doing all this stuff on Twitter, well, that's the campaign. But it's actually not. It's not. The source, the content, the thing that got the person to come over and convert is actually, in most cases, the campaign. So, for example, we done an event last month. It was a great event, London's Calling, and this is what we want to see in our marketing ROI reports. So we spent so much, we met so many people, there were this many opportunities generated in the pipeline, and we won this much. Now, it's very easy for me to go back to my CEO next year and say, hey, we have to sponsor London Calling again. We got 10 times return on the revenue invested. Now, if we delve deeper into these responses, we could see we generated 293 responses from the badge scanning system that cost $500. And we can see that we got 69 responses from the competition we run, where people left their business cards in a bowl. And we can also see that 5 business cards were acquired by the sales team. But we do not need to see that in our campaign. We roll the costs up. Sponsorship of the event wasn't $6,000, it might have been $4,000. And we might have spent money on banners, and we might have spent money on the scanning system and the competition prize. But actually, the whole event as a whole cost $6,000, and we just want to see the ROI on the whole spend of that event. Now, that's quite an easy example. When we go into something like today's webinar, it becomes slightly more complicated. So we've got the webinar again. This is what we want to see in our ROI reports in Salesforce. But when we add the source, we could say, well, first of all, we sent a newsletter that mentioned that we were doing this webinar today, and we've got 151 responses. And then we could say, well, we've done some CRM marketing, so that was 87 responses. And we've done some Twitter marketing, and that got 64 responses, and so on. But it's not helpful from a marketing ROI perspective to split out the source. We don't want to see this in Salesforce. I'm not saying that the source isn't important, but it's not helpful when we're trying to prove ROI in Salesforce. When we're doing source tracking, we need to use Google Analytics. The source is really important. We want to know where we're generating traffic from. I would encourage you all to set up goals and use UTM tracking for everything that you are doing, and use Google Analytics to see where the sources of traffic are coming from. But don't confuse this with campaigns. We can then look at conversion points. Now, it's worth saying that the conversion point is often the same as the campaign. But again, when we're looking in Salesforce, we don't need to know the granular detail of all the activities that happened during that campaign. We simply want to see this. So, just to summarize, the originating source of a person and campaigns are mutually exclusive. We may generate someone, they may originate from an event we've done 5 years ago, or they may originate from a webinar we've done 6 months ago, but they can still be members of a campaign. Now, it's really important for ongoing campaign ROI that this is what we look at. If we just take all the people that we met 5 years ago, if we did nothing, the likelihood is of them coming in and us closing some business with them is much, much lower than if we're active and we do webinars and we do white papers and we do lots of marketing activity to generate more interest and drive that person down the funnel. So we're not just looking at source, we are looking at individual campaigns and how they affect our revenues. Now, source is very, very important, but it doesn't need to be split out for ROI. And the only excluding area really for this is paid advertising like PPC, where the source and where the content and where the term is very, very important. And lastly, use Google Analytics and goals for source reporting and UTM track everything. It really, really is important. And when I come on in a second to Pardot, the way Pardot interacts with Google Analytics is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to move on now to Pardot campaigns and Salesforce campaigns, which are very, very different. Here is a record in Pardot, and if you look in the content section, you can see that the source campaign is Pardot tracking, and the conversion point is Born website contact form. So what that's saying is the source campaign was Pardot tracking is the tracking that's on our website, so it's a natural search is the source, and the conversion point is when they filled in that form on the website. Now, it's worth saying that Pardot campaigns are used for all sorts of areas inside Pardot. So when you create a custom redirect, or if you create a landing page, or if you create an email, you're always associating every element of your assets in Pardot to campaigns. So just to recap again, Pardot campaigns track the first touch that a prospect has with your online marketing activities. Now, with various marketing elements being associated with a campaign, you'll often find that the campaigns in Pardot aren't necessarily the same as your marketing campaigns. So let me give you an example for that. When Ebsta sign a client, we have a run of 5 emails that go out to that client to onboard them. Now, when we create those 5 emails in Pardot, we are forced, and you have to attach those 5 emails to a campaign. So the campaign we have in Pardot for those emails is onboarding emails. Now, that is not the same as the marketing campaign that we are running, that we are putting effort into on a monthly basis. So there is differentiation, and you are doubling up 2 types of activities within that one campaign feature in Pardot. It's worth also saying that Pardot also creates campaigns from the UTM tracking on links. So if someone clicks on a link that has UTM tracking and that has a UTM campaign, if the person doesn't already exist in Pardot, Pardot will pick up the campaign, it will create the campaign in Pardot, and it will associate that person to the campaign. And last but not least, Pardot campaigns do not support multi-touch. It is just the first touch from your online marketing activities. So moving swiftly on, the big difference with Salesforce campaigns, as you can see from this window, is I'm here in our Salesforce org, and I've got lots of campaigns associated to me. So Salesforce campaigns are multi-touch. You know, you can have a lot of different campaigns attached to the same person. This is a typical campaign setup in Salesforce. As you can see, we've got more options. We've got start dates, end dates, expected revenue, budgeted cost. One feature that I particularly like is you'll see the advanced setup button just next to manage members. If you click that, you come to this screen, and this screen allows you to set different campaign member statuses. Now the out-the-box member status from Salesforce is sent and responded, but for webinars we'll have attended. For live events we might have interested, so the person has had a demo and they're interested in knowing more. So we tailor the member status depending on the type of campaign that we're doing. Now, this is an opportunity in Salesforce. Now, as you see from the bottom, there is a contact role associated to this opportunity, and this is where campaigns really come into play. If we can get a salesperson to attach a contact role to an opportunity, and just in this case, if we were to click New next to contact roles, the salesperson would see this screen, and they simply need to select with the radio button and choose the role and save to add a contact role to the opportunity. Now, if that happens, then the primary campaign source in the opportunity will be populated with the latest campaign that that person, Daniel Remedios, was associated to, which is immediately populates your campaign that's being attached to opportunities. And also, and I'm going to show you this later, we can start using marketing attribution or marketing influence to look at how our marketing activities affect the opportunities and the incoming revenue. Now, there's a couple of big points to make here. In the first example, if Steve is added to an opportunity and is later associated to a campaign after the opportunity is closed, the campaign will not be associated with the opportunity. So what we're really saying here is associating with a contact role is not retrospective. It doesn't go back in time. So essentially what we're saying is that the contact role has to be added to the opportunity before the opportunity is closed. And that is very, very important. So the second point is if Steve is associated to a campaign and then added as a contact role to the opportunity, the most recent campaign will be logged as the primary campaign against the opportunity. Now, this also has its flaws, and it's important to understand. Say, for instance, that we met Steve at a big event that we spent lots of money for. And then let's say that we send everyone in our database a newsletter, and all those newsletter people get added to a campaign. The newsletter would overwrite the important campaign because it's more recent. So that's an important thing. I'm going to come on to that a bit later on. So the Salesforce campaign summary. Prospects and contacts can be associated with multiple Salesforce campaigns. It is not like Pardot. There's not a single source campaign. They can be attached to any number of Salesforce campaigns over time. You can also define campaign member status to suit your campaigns, your measures, the way you measure different things. And if contact roles are associated to opportunities before they close, marketing ROI can be tracked. And contact roles cannot be added retrospectively. So this is where I start getting really excited, and I really start showing you the power of Pardot. This, you know, if you're like me, this will take your breath away, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here. So again, good example. Let's look at the people that signed up for this webinar today. So you would have hit a landing page, which was a Pardot landing page, and on that landing page there was a form, and this is the form. And you can see that the form has the first name, last name, email, and what is your Twitter handle. And I very much hope to follow all of you over the course of the next week. Now, if we look at the section in the bottom, I'm just going to highlight that for you. We can see that on completion, I can set a rule to add to a Salesforce.com campaign. So we've got a campaign in Salesforce called Webinar, Ricky's Pardot ROI, and I'm going to add you as the member status responded. Just below that, you can see register for a webinar, and that's the Pardot integration with GoToWebinar. So when you're filling in that form, you're also automatically getting added to GoToWebinar, and you're getting the GoToWebinar emails and links and all the rest of it. That's another great feature of Pardot. Now, let's look at a webinar we done last week. So we've done this Salesforce Rep, how to build an awesome sales rep dashboard in Salesforce. There's a tongue twister. And you'll see here that we had 130 people attend that webinar last week. So what I can do in Pardot is I can click on that 130, and that will bring me up this screen. And I'm able to now create a list of 130 people. So I'm going to do that, and then I can use a segmentation rule. And if you look at the rules at the bottom, we can say prospect list is webinar attended, how to build an awesome sales rep dashboard in Salesforce. So I've just added those 130 people to that list, and now I can add an action. And again, you'll see add prospect to Salesforce.campaign. Now this time we're adding them to the webinar, but you can see the campaign status is attended. So we can define those campaign or member status values when we're adding members back into Salesforce via Pardot. Automation rules. I very briefly touched on PPC earlier. What we want to do here is I'm looking at all of the AdWords, all the paid people will come in with Google Analytics parameters, and the source will be AdWords and the medium will be search. If it was a display advert, the medium would be display. And as you can see here, I'm just going to create an automation rule to find anyone in our database that has the source as AdWords and the medium as search, and I'm going to add them to the prospect campaign as PPC with a status of responded. They pretty much have to have been responded to be in the Pardot database. And just this last one, and as I say, really with Pardot, the options are endless, but here's a page action. So at the end of last year, we spent a lot of time building this really great report, which was around Salesforce usage and Salesforce admins and Salesforce problems. And we published this report in December, and we sent it out to our database. And it took a lot of effort, and it was a lot of work and a lot of time to get that report written and up live on the website. And we didn't want to gate it. We wanted it to be viral, so we published it on our blog. But off the back of that, I really wanted to know who read that report. So with Salesforce page actions, again, I can say any user that exists in our database that looks at this page, I can automatically add them to a Salesforce campaign as the Salesforce usage report responded. And for me, that is just fantastic. Campaign automation summary. Campaigns do not work in silos. Everything is linked. There is a marketing effort going on with lots of activities, with lots of things going on, and they are not all individuals. So we need to have multi-touch. The Pardot injects life into Salesforce campaigns. I can honestly say, as a marketeer, Salesforce campaigns would be useless to me without Pardot. Who would do it? Who would export all the information and then data load it into Salesforce every time? Who would look at all the times people respond or attend and download information out of GoToWebinar and upload information into Salesforce? Now the same comes with Salesforce campaigns. You know, without Salesforce campaigns, I'm not sure Pardot would be as powerful. You know, getting that multi-touch, seeing how all of our marketing activities combine to drive results. Pardot is amazing and it's full of wonderful features, but without the ROI aspect, it's going to be very, very difficult for us as marketeers to say we need to spend more money on this, and to really gain the respect from our C-level and our colleagues to really know what we're talking about and really know what drives sales down that funnel. And I put a little note at the bottom, you know, anything is possible. It's just that you might need to hire 1, 2, 3 or people to do it full time if you were to do it manually. Forcing contact role association. This is quite a biggie, and I'm going to let you in on a secret here that you might be aware of or you might not. This is what happens in Ebsta Salesforce org when someone tries to save an opportunity without a contact role. You can probably see on the screen, error. You must add a contact role. What does this mean? This means that no salesperson in Ebsta can close a deal or get paid commission until a contact role is added to the opportunity. And again, all they need to do is click New, select the person that they're dealing with and press Save, and then they can close the opportunity. Now, I've spoken to organisations before that really encourage the salespeople to add the primary campaign source, and you'll see it on the screen here. And my argument is that they will never know what the primary campaign source is, or they might know 2% of the time, but it is so subjective. It's kind of like when you go online and applying for a service and they say, how did you hear about us? And guess what? 90% of the people that hear about that company hear about them through the first option because they can't be bothered to go through the list and work out how they first heard of the company. And I really think it works the same as campaigns. You can get people to add the primary campaign source, but actually if you want correct data and you really want to know ROI, I'd strongly recommend that you don't do that. Now, just going back to previously, how do we force the contact roles? I'm going to go into Salesforce tech speak now. And we simply added a custom field on the opportunity object called number of contact roles. We then created an Apex trigger, which essentially counted the number of contact roles against the opportunity every time there was a field change on the opportunity, and then saved that down on the opportunity object in the new field. And then we added a validation rule that basically said, if that value in the field is less than 1, then don't allow this opportunity to be closed. So this is the Apex trigger. This is written in Apex, which is Salesforce's own coding language. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about what is going on here, but I thought I would show it on screen so those that do can get a look at it. And this is the validation rule. And this is simply saying, if you look at the condition formula, if the stage name is closed 1, or the stage name is closed lost, and the number of contact roles assigned is less than 1, and the type is new business, then we fling up the error, you must add a contact role. So it's worth saying, the reason we've put the new business element in that formula is because we don't want to be forcing our accounts team to be adding contact roles for every auto renewal via credit card and things like that. So recap, we know how to set up campaigns. We know how to automate campaign flow between Pardot and Salesforce, so that's really where one of the most powerful Pardot features comes and kicks into play. We've gone over why we need to GA track everything, and let's not forget that using GA tracking, we can build automation campaigns in Pardot that retrospectively add people to campaigns or automatically add people to new campaigns in Salesforce if we've forgotten to do it, or if that campaign didn't exist but now does, we can then build an automation campaign to automate that. And we know how to force a contact role association. And it's just worth saying, if anyone's got any queries on that contact role association, if you email Katrina, my content marketing manager, who sent the invites out today, if you email her, I'll put a short document together to share that with anyone that wants to implement that themselves. So now we're going on to the accurately reporting B2B Marketing ROI, and we put a drum there for the drum roll, so I hope everyone's very excited. Salesforce has got a really powerful feature, which is campaign influence. And I just want to show you this before we kick off. And this is Ebsta's campaign influence setup. And if we look at it, it's also worth mentioning, if you go to setup and you're an administrator and you go to campaigns, you've got then a campaign influence section that will take you to this area. So we've got automatic association enabled. I'm really interested in the campaigns that someone has been involved with in the last 90 days. Our deal cycle is about 8 weeks or 10 weeks. So everything that's happened in the last 90 days is relevant when I'm looking at the closed opportunities. You'll see that I'm also able to define the campaign member status. So what you don't want is this to be empty and all of the sent campaign members to be added to all your campaigns. Just because you've emailed someone about a webinar, if they haven't signed up or they haven't attended or you didn't speak to them, then they really shouldn't be associated with that campaign. So once we've built campaign influence, we can create a campaigns with influenced opportunities report in Salesforce. And that will look something like this. So you'll see that I'm just looking at the webinars from this year here, and you'll see that all the people that have been signed up or attended our webinars in the last, actually not this year, in the last sort of 12 months for these webinars. Now the important thing here is you'll see at the top, Shelley Damo exists twice. And just below Shelley, you've got Michael Maz, and he's there at the top, and he's also there at the bottom. Now, if I was to expand campaign influence out across all Ebsta campaigns right now, you would see the same person appearing on 5, 8, 10, 15 different campaigns. Because the influence of all the different campaigns, marketing does not work in silos. Campaigns do not work in silos. You might get one person who signs up for a webinar and then buys, but that is a rarity. People have multiple touch points with marketing. So I just want to really illustrate that the different marketing touch points are key when you're looking at ROI reporting. Now, here we've got a campaign with opportunities report. Now here, this is what this is going to do. This is going to look at an opportunity, and it's going to look at the primary campaign that is against the opportunity, and then it's going to show the amount. So this is really where you start getting your ROI, and you can group the campaigns, and you can do a lot of different things in this report to get a full view of your performance in the last quarter or the last year, or specific teams or areas. We all know that Salesforce reporting is very powerful. This is a very basic example. Now my point here, going back to what we just discussed with campaign influence, is that this will automatically be populated. The campaigns will automatically be populated against the opportunity when salespeople attach a contact role to an opportunity, as long as they're associated to a campaign. However, if we've got the newsletter example where we sent out a newsletter and they did something that ended up them being added to a newsletter campaign with the member status of responded. Or say, for instance, we spent a huge amount of money being the platinum sponsor for an event, and then someone signed up for the webinar. Well, if I'm spending a lot of money being a platinum sponsor, and then we run a really great webinar program and lots of people sign up for our webinars after that event, when it comes around to the next year, when I'm saying I want to do this event, I want to be the platinum sponsor again, I'm going to look at my marketing ROI report, and we're going to see that we've got no opportunities. However, we're going to see that our webinars are fantastic. So the argument is going to be, well, we don't need to do executive or executive sponsorship or platinum sponsorship. We should just do webinars. But that isn't the truth. Now, as much as we hate it, and as much as it's going to pain me to say this, after 10 years, this is really the truth. And the truth is that to track ROI accurately, marketing has to verify the primary campaign associated with each opportunity. Now, this might seem like a bit of a drag, and some months, you know, the better the company does, frankly, the more work it is for marketing. But that is the only way we can truly associate the right primary campaign, the right action, the right thing that got that deal over the line with each opportunity and get proper, accurate ROI reporting. And to do that, we use campaign influence. Now, it's worth saying that campaign influence also provides me with an amazing insight to this holistic view of all marketing campaign performance. And it's not just limited to new business deals coming in. If I can look at all of our customers and all the important people in our customer base, and I can see all the marketing activities that we're doing to engage them, and I can relate that to renewals, then that is also a worthwhile cause. That is also a worthwhile investment. So the ability to use campaign influence across multiple different scenarios is really, really important to our business. And just to finish, it's worth saying that Salesforce triggers can be used to make the primary campaign association that happens when you add a contact role to an opportunity much more accurate. Essentially, if you build your own trigger, you can take anything into account. You can look at the first campaign, you can look at the biggest investment, you can really go to town when you're coding your own trigger, or to make that automatic association of a primary campaign much more relevant, more effective, and more accurate. That said, I would still urge you to verify that as a marketing department, because at the end of the day, it's all very well spending the money, but you need to put in the hours to make sure that you're spending that money well. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. You can link with me on LinkedIn if you have found this very, very useful. I would appreciate any sort of recommendation, or my Twitter handle is there too. It's also worth mentioning that we've got a webinar next week with Ben McCarthy, who's a Salesforce MVP, who's going to talk all about Salesforce automation, including a lot of the things I've just spoken about, such as triggers and automation and building those for yourself in Salesforce. So thank you for your time today. Take care.